Do you agree that this shouldn't necessarily be just at the hands of the security forces?
No, absolutely. One of the things we have to realise is we can't legislate our way out of this problem. We can't outsource the problem that we've got to the police and to our security services. Their jobs really are to make sure that the country is safe and to stop somebody just at the point before they may well be committing an illegal act or a crime. This is a problem for society at large. And there are two parts of this. The first part is when somebody actually expresses and shows support for groups such as ISIL and Al-Qaeda and other extremist terrorist organisations, there need to be interventions, and there is a channel programme at the moment, but it's voluntary, it's not mandatory. Then there's the wider part. How do we as a society figure out a way to actually stop and prevent our youngsters from going down this path in the first place? How do we stop them from being radicalised? How do parents, how do teachers, and this is I think the long-term solution that we need to look at. As a society, we need to build more resilience, and I think that's something that we should be focusing on a lot more, rather than just blaming the security services.
How can anybody get in the heads of teenagers? They're masters at obfuscation, aren't they? It's very, very difficult for parents, let alone teachers and other people in their community, to actually really understand what is going on with their children.
No, absolutely. This is not just a problem within Muslim communities. This is a general problem that teenagers do rebel. But I think one of the things, we were talking about earlier on about friendships and social media. Now, we know that social media is a mechanism. We know that friendships do play a part. But let's not forget and let's not underplay the part and the belief that these two young girls believe that they're going out there to support and join an so-called Islamic State. They're going out there, they believe, they've been told by their friends that this is a moral and religious duty for them to do so, and that's something that I think parents at home can certainly try and look at dissecting from a young age and from an early part. I mean, if I can just give you a very quick anecdote, there was somebody I met a few years ago. His son had gone to university, and he was a son of an immigrant, and he was studying medicine, and he came home and he was radicalised to such an effect that he started asking political questions. He started believing a different type of Islam than the parents, and then he used to separate his food into two parts. He'd eat one half and he'd leave the other part alone. Finally, they got to asking and finding out why that was. And his answer was that he believed the father was committing a sin by wishing the next door neighbour a Merry Christmas, and therefore the food that was provided for him was actually haram. It was not allowed. But because he was fighting the bigger jihad, he needed to eat what he needed to eat to stay alive. Now, the reason why this parent, when I met this father, he was crying so much, wasn't just because of that, but because he'd missed the signs, and ultimately he went upstairs to the son's bedroom one day and he'd gone out to fight a so-called jihad in Afghanistan. There are signs, but I think as parents we do miss them.
But there aren't necessarily signs, according to these three families, are there, Haris? I mean, we heard from one of the dads who said they didn't really talk about politics in their house. They had no idea that their daughter was political. And we heard from one of the sisters to say that she'd actually had a conversation with her sister after her school friend had gone away and said, "You wouldn't do anything stupid like that, would you?" And her sister had said no. So for these families, there weren't any signs, were there?
Well, we don't know. I mean, even for the family that I was talking about, they never recognised the signs. They never saw the signs. They just thought that the young child was becoming more Islamic, although he was following a different type of Islam. He was following a type of Islam that says, you know what, he has to believe in the utopian Islamist caliphate, and he has to believe in things like the Hudud laws, things like, you know, if somebody changes their faith from Islam to something else in an ideal Islamic state, they should be killed. And these are little telltale signs that they missed, and a lot of parents do miss, a little bit like other things. I mean, as parents, we have a moral and a social responsibility to keep an eye on our children when they might be being racist, or they might be committing crimes or something else, or taking drugs. I think sometimes as parents we do miss signs, and in hindsight there are things that we may say, okay, well, yeah, that was something that we should have picked up. I think there's two parts. There is one, if somebody is preparing to break the law, if somebody is about to break the law, or somebody has broken the law, then they have to go through the due process. Otherwise, what's the point in having the law? Where there is a fear amongst some parents is that they believe when they see children, when they see people within the communities actually thinking about doing something, and then involving the police, I think that's where the fear is. And I think that's where agencies such as the local councils, the prevent officers, I mean, we get parents all the time emailing us for advice advice and support, and we help them. We don't necessarily always involve the agencies. If there's the first thing we will do is do a risk assessment and see if agencies need to be involved, and if that's the case, then so be it. But I think that when somebody is preparing to break the law or is about to break the law, they have to go through the due process. Some parents are concerned, of course, and this is where we need to take the whole aspect of prevent away from the police. I don't believe that criminalisation, when the police are involved in preventing extremism, there is a fear that this can become criminal. Thought police can come into play. People who may be thinking about doing something may become criminalised. That's not what our society is about, and I think that's where some people within the community may have a fear. And let's have, rather than the police, let's have other agencies, parents, school teachers, as I mentioned before, them actually taking on this role of rehabilitation.
Okay.